All right, great games at your table. I'm Jonathan Albin. This is NycosRPG, and this is the Game Master's Soapbox. And today we are going to be covering 10 specific touch points for successful storytelling. When you run a role-playing game as often as I do, I've been running, as I've said before, for more than 50 years. Every time you tell a story, you hope that it's going to be exciting, thrilling, and fun for players. And you sometimes second guess yourself. Today we're going to be looking at 10 ways you can tell that you're doing a good job, and also to keep it as a kind of a guideline or checklist for your sessions to make sure you're running at top performance. Before we get into that, make sure you hit the buttons down below to let the algorithm know that you're part of our audience, and let's get going.
Absorbing damage is the name of the game. From the claws of monsters or the heat from a ball of flame, or strength in numbers is a roll of the dice.
I've been telling stories for 50 years. I've been a game master for Dungeons and Dragons and virtually every other role-play game ever published over the last 50 years. And what I've found is that the players really appreciate a game that hits on all cylinders. Well, sometimes it's difficult to tell which ones they are because there are so many things to consider when you're a storyteller, a game master. You have to worry about whether the NPCs are believable, whether or not the location feels right, whether the ambiance is set, and so on. And so for years I wrestled with, how do you know that you've done a good job? Can you tell? And sure, it's great if the players tell you you've done a good job, but there are certain telltale signs, regardless of who you have at the table, that really do cause your game to shine compared to others that are out there. So we're going to go over these 10 points relatively quickly. I just want to kind of bring them top of mind so that you can build for yourself a mechanism to make sure that you're hitting on, as I said, all cylinders. So first thing we have to look at is, did they do something that mattered? If the players are engaging in killing monsters perfunctorily, they're spending more of their time looking at their character sheet than they are each other at the table, you may be having a problem. So you want to make sure that the story that you tell is compelling. Now, does that mean you have to be a railroader and you have to build everything out in front? Certainly not. You can do so with a well-planned encounter regardless of how it plays out, but you have to make sure that that story feels important, and if it feels important, the players will take it as important. Second thing is inclusion. If you're running a group of 4, 5, 6 players and only 1 or 2 are doing most of the talking, the game's not going to feel right. The players are going to be disappointed and feel like they somehow were less of a part of the group than they might have been otherwise. So make sure that the play includes everybody. If you're doing a session and you have to perhaps tug on or pull a player into it, that means that there's a disconnect someplace, and we have to figure out what those are. If you want a session to be successful every time, it has to be something where everyone feels like they're part of the scenes. Now, this one's kind of interesting. You want to make sure that the sessions draw in 100% of the player, and the easiest way to do that is to have the story have a meaning or a substance that causes personal and direct concern. Often this needs to be done sporadically and intentionally, but it also has to feel not feel contrived. It has to feel like it was part of the story. And quite frankly, this often is a sign of a home run, even if nothing else goes right, because the emotional state of the player is critical to their enjoyment of it. And so if they felt anything, if they viscerally made it part of their being, then you've done right. Now, if the story is a cookie cutter out of a box and looks exactly the same as every other encounter you've ever run, the story may not be as memorable or exciting. So make sure that there is a few whoop-de-doos as you go through your game, because if your story takes a turn for the better, for the worse, just to be alternate, then you give a chance for the players to really sink their teeth into what's going on and making it part of what they remember. Now, if you're like me, you build a role play mechanism in order to break it. But the idea here is that if the players' ideas are perfectly in line with the mechanics of the game, it's not going to feel as exciting as if something they did was a little bit edgy, a little bit off kilter, a little bit outside of the box, so to speak. So make sure that you're aware of the rules enough that you can twist and bend them when necessary, because it's not the elements of the story that are going to be remembered. It's going to be the emotional state of the players while they are in it. And even if they're aware of a rules break, they can put their finger to the side of their nose because it's still something they definitely remember. And if they think they got one over on you, then that probably was a good thing. Now, I know this one sounds logical. Everybody plays, so it must be a great game. Well, no. What I'm referring to is that everybody in the game is engaged and playing with each other, off of each other. They're bouncing beats around the room to make sure that everyone feels like it's part of their action and everybody is invested. And this is really critical to making a game really be the best it can be. Of course, this has to be set in a fictional setting, but the fictional setting has to be as real as possible for the players so that the decisions that they make will feel real time, as if they made them, not that they made them for someone else. It's a nuanced difference, but it's really a matter of intention, that the persons that are at the table have to know the stakes, be aware of what the stakes are, and be willing to make those risks. Also, the challenge of the game has to be tangible. It has to be part of who they are when the game session is done. Yes, it's a fiction. Yes, it is collective storytelling and it's collaborative in nature. But if you really want a game to be remembered, it's got to be there's got to be great risk. You know that saying about risk and responsibility. You want to make sure that the risk is worth the effort and that the players realize how close they cut it when it came to their success, and therefore it has to be a very tangible, very visceral danger or threat or challenge in the session. Now, you can have players at your table who are rules advocates, rules lawyers. You might have people at the table who are attempting to win at the role-play game. But if you can make it so that the session changes the players, changes the character's perspective, changes the environment around them so that they see that what they've done actually mattered to the story, you are successfully accomplished this. You are making it so that more than just the numbers on the pages changed. And when you do that, the players will appreciate it and acknowledge it and be glad of it. And above all else, your players have to feel the connectiveness of the session. When a games group plays together as a team, when the players accomplish the task playing off of one another, it's explosive, it's powerful, and it really accomplishes the task of making sure that the game session was amazing. So now my question to you is, how does your table work when you've got a success under your belt, when you felt it at the beginning of the session and the excitement and thrill never stopped? What's that like? How did you handle that? Leave a comment below and let us all kind of rejoice with you in your successes. If you have challenges in any one of these areas, feel free to ask any questions. I'd be glad to help you to overcome those difficulties. And I want to thank you for being here. I'm Jonathan Albin. This has been NycosRPG. We're here 5 days a week, and I will see you next time. By the way, go play.